Hi, I'm Joe from Martyr Art, and you're watching Mass Movement. Okay, so before I get into the list of the 10 albums that defined my life, taking a quick minute to talk about my new album, Fear of Faith Machines. It's available on cassette, little spinny tape, goes round and round. CD is played by a laser with the disc going round and round. Also available on limited edition Coffin box set, which, if you open it up the correct direction, there's a little USB for you. Put your shit on it. And there's a ton of music on there too. Alright, on to the list. Number 10, Depeche Mode, Violator. I heard Enjoy the Silence as a kid. I was about 7 or 8 years old. And the song blew my mind. I'd never heard anything like it. Unfortunately, I was walking down a sidewalk and I just heard it in someone's car passing by. So I never knew who it was and if I would ever hear that song again, and it kind of disappeared out of my life. And then hanging out with a friend of mine in my early 20s, we were listening to some industrial stuff, turned that album off, and then the song playing on the radio was Enjoy the Silence. Totally freaked out. I'm like, this is the song I've been looking for my entire life, blah, blah, blah. Who is it? My friend knew who it was. He's like, it's Depeche Mode. The album's Violator. Go get it. So I went to FYE the next day. They didn't have it, but I got the greatest hits, 86 to 98. And it just blew my mind, like all the different types of music they did, all the different styles over the course of their career. And then when I finally got this copy, the whole album is just perfect. Perfectly executed. All the songs written extremely well. Yeah, that's Depeche Mode, Violator. Number 9, Faith No More, Angel Dust. I was watching MTV when I was about 11 years old, and Epic came on TV. I've never seen anything like it. And when I was watching, I was like, what is it? And it was actually part of the marketing campaign for the Guns N' Metallica tour, which Faith No More was opening for both Metallica and Guns N' Roses, which is a pretty cool gig, if you ask me. So, saw the video, really loved it. Then, I didn't have access to that album or anything like that. Skipped to my senior year of high school. My buddy Kyle lent me a VHS, that's before DVDs, kids, of music videos encompassing their entire catalog. I put it on and immediately fell in love with everything they did. Became a hardcore fan in a day. And as soon as I can get to the record store, I grabbed a copy of this album specifically. There's a few music videos they have. Everything's Ruined, Midlife Crisis, A Small Victory, but it was all of those plus the live performance from 120 minutes of Caffeine. That just, all that combined, it was just like, this is the album I gotta start with. They did a lot of crazy stuff on here, definitely ahead of its time, and try to think of when this was released then, that it must have been just so far, in the future that it was just like lost on a lot of people. Number 8 is Korn, self-titled. I was in a band called White Plague when I was 14. I was a 7th grader in a band of seniors, so the dynamic right off the bat was interesting, to say the least. I was into, obviously, Metallica and Pantera and Sepultura and Megadeth and that sort of music. But they're like, yo man, you should really check out this album. This is stuff we're listening to. I heard it, and just the tones and aggression and how being so forward emotionally, like internal emotion, really translated and really communicated to me, because I'm still to this day a little introspective, but even more so then, dealing with a lot of like existential life questions and shit. But yeah, it still holds up to this day. It's an incredible album. The production's raw. It was lightning in the bottle. Number 7, White Zombie, Astral Creep 2000. I became a hardcore fan of White Zombie when I was about 10 years old with Los Exorcisto. Thunder Kiss 65, Black Sunshine, incredible songs, awesome music videos. And, Beavis and Butthead were huge fans, so, I was all in. So I obsessively listened to that album, and then this album dropped, melted my mind. So dense with sounds, like I was not expecting this. I was not ready for this. but I went in head deep, and it's still an album I reference, and an album that's it's just so high up on my list. Number 6, The Crow soundtrack. I saw this film when I was 14. It was so dark and interesting and immersive, and in a sense kind of reminded me of the universe of the first Tim Burton Batman, where it's that gothic vibe. Obviously it's gothic, but there's suspense, there's elements of horror and everything like that, whether it's overtly upfront or kind of underlining. And I just remember experiencing the film in a different way than I had experienced films beforehand, because to me, the film, the visuals and the audio of the songs perfectly matched each other. Nothing was kind of, put in the background or whatever. It never felt like it was in the background. It felt like the story was being communicated evenly, both visually and auditorially, if that's even a word. If not, it's real now. Anyways, so many incredible songs. I mean, The Cure, Burn, that is like one of my top 20 songs of all time. Pantera doing a cover of The Badge is so badass, and listening to it be like, that must have been recorded during the Far Beyond Driven album. That's so cool. And then hearing Dead Souls, which I didn't even realize was a cover song until, 13 years later. So I always thought it was an original song, and I was just like, this is incredible. Then realizing that it was tracked during the same time as the Downward Spiral, and to find out later on that he actually sequenced the album as well. So it actually made it feel like an album as opposed to just a collection of songs on a soundtrack. My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult, Helmet, Rollins Band, Rage Against the Machine, Stone Temple Pilots. This is a perfect compilation of 1994. If you don't have it, get it. Number 5, Anthrax, Sound of White Noise. I was watching an episode of the Headbangers Ball, Ricky Rackman era. So the music video for Room for One More came on. At this point, I was, familiar with the Joey Belladonna era of Anthrax. Hearing this with John Bush's voice on it, it was just something else. I was just immediately sold on it. As soon as I could, I got to the record store and I was digging through and finally came across the album. And I'm just looking at the artwork, and it's so vague but cool at the same time. It's just like, I feel like this is just gonna sound awesome. Like, this is just gonna kick my ass, just from what it looks like. And I was wrong before. I was right, 100% right. Potter's Field is one of my favorite songs of all time. Love that song, it's so perfect. Only perfect song as well. So much so where James Hetfield and Metallica even said so. So you're doing something right when you get that sort of endorsement. There is no fat on this album. So many layers of guitars. Charlie Benante is like destroying his drums. And then to see them open for Pantera on the official Live 101 tour, and to hear them play those songs from the album live, and then to see people losing their minds in the mosh pit, they knew what they were doing. Number 4 is Led Zeppelin 4. When I was developing as a guitarist and a musician, my dad was very much focused on me appreciating and learning aspects of blues and blues-based rock. So, Yardbirds was this, one of the first bands I started listening to, which had Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page, all as guitar players in the band. Obviously, with Eric Clapton, he went to Cream. Jeff Beck had his own solo project, and then Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin. Loved Led Zeppelin 1. So many great songs on that, but it was still very much blues-based. By the way, I never heard number 2 or 3 at that point. So number 4 came around, and then realizing that this was the album Stairway to Heaven, it's like, all right, I'm ready for this, let me go. And each song just blew my mind. There's like an underlining tone of darkness. It's nothing like you could really pick up on. It's just kind of like an undercurrent sort of thing. But everything that's on top of that is just, some of it's like the most beautiful music you'll ever hear, and some of it's the most crushing, just rock and roll riffs, just oozing with fuck yeah. if that's a thing. If not, it is now. Number 3, Sepultura, Beneath the Remains. I was about 7 years old when I became aware of Sepultura. And it was only through these magazines that Metallica had published during the Black Album, where they had like 6 or 7 magazines at once at a time circulating. And within those magazines, they would showcase other bands. So they would showcase Pantera, so they had a little poster and a little interview and write up about them. And they had one for Testament, they had one for Sepultura as well. And I'm like, these guys look different, like, what's their story? So I read up a little bit of what was in there, and they're from Brazil, and they're thrash metal. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. It always stuck out in my mind, most specifically Pantera and Sepultura. And I'm like, I should remember this for whatever reason, but I should keep this in the back of my mind. I turned 14 or whatever, 7 years later. I somehow got a copy of this album on cassette. I really don't remember how. I just remember having it on cassette, and I listened to it every day on my cassette Walkman at school. Every morning, that's what I would listen to. So, like, this entire album, because it took that long to get to school. This album's like 45 minutes or something like that. And I just loved how different they sounded, while still incorporating a lot of the elements I was familiar with. Thrash metal sound, but them expanding upon it with their own sound. I followed them after that as much as I could. When they were on Headbangers Ball, I was like totally, yes, Territory, it's an awesome music video. And then Roots came out, and I was just like, what the hell? They went back to Brazil and recorded with tribes. They made a tribe metal album. It's the fucking most gangster thing ever. For number 2, you're gonna get your pull, Pantera, Already Undriven. Okay, so like I mentioned in the Sepultura video, Pantera was featured in one of the Metallica magazines, had a poster of them, Cowboy from Hell era, a little interview write-up about them. I was like, that's pretty cool. Another band, like, keep that in the back of your mind, might come into use later down the road. It was like a year and a half later, I'm at my cousin's house, and he had this great collection of Nintendo games. He's the reason why I fell in love with the Friday the 13th game and did that as a cover, or did my rendition of that theme, and that's why I play that song live and everything like that. When I'd go to people's houses, I'd look at their collections, like their video collections, their CD collections, and music collections. That was always a thing I did. And I saw this album cover. I'm like, what is this? The name wasn't registering with me at that point, but just the album cover, just like, I need to know what this sounds like. I might like this. So my cousin Bobby grabbed his portable Discman and buds and sat me down at his mother's kitchen table. Now, mind you, my mom, my great-grandmother, my great-aunt, other family members are sitting around, and I'm just sitting there listening to this album by myself, trying to contain my face from changing, because I'm just like, it was so extreme, I was not ready for it. And I was just like, what is happening? I hope no one else can hear this. Because I was afraid if anyone heard it, that they would rip it out of my hands and, forbid me from listening to it. But that didn't happen, and I got through the whole album, and I was like, I need to get this when I'm older. So then, I was 14 years old, I finally grabbed my copy of this. It was on. Listened to it again, kind of rediscovering it, and became a favorite band of mine. And then I started getting their other albums, Cowboys from Hell and Vulgar Display of Power, and then getting the Cowboys from Hell home video, which completely changed my viewpoint on this band. All the shenanigans, especially like Watch It with 3, Watch It Go, one of the greatest home videos ever. If you haven't seen it, you gotta see it. But that wraps up Far Beyond Driven. All right, number 1, Metallica. Black Album, self-titled, whatever you want to call it. One of the biggest albums of all time. This is really where it all started for me, musically. The God That Failed definitely was a song that resonated with me as a kid, especially with the way I felt about religion at a young age. Sabbath True is like the heaviest song probably ever on radio. Yeah, even the ballads on this album are like really well-written songs. Obviously, every song in this album is like a classic song. This album put me on the path to everything else that I've done since that point. All the other music I've listened to, even non-metal, because this album showed me that you could listen to other types of music and infuse it into what you do. And you could still be heavy, but then you could still do something that's out of the box, but still be respected for it, whether somebody liked it or not. So, yeah, that's why this is my number one. Alright, so I want to thank you for watching this video, me geeking out over albums that have defined my life and have changed my life, and hopefully are albums that you enjoyed or are interested in checking out. Just as a reminder, my album, Fear Faith Machines, is out now. You can buy it physically, digitally, or stream it. And all that information, all those links are available at martyrart.com. MARTYRART.com. Thank you.